Alrighty then, good afternoon all you fantastic people, Silver Dragon here, coming at you with a relatively quick little tips and tricks video. I had somebody request that I do kind of like a basic tutorial on Dwarf Fortress and such, and I might do something like that, but honestly it would take a lot of time that I don't necessarily have at the moment, but I figured at the very least I do have enough to whip together a nice little tips and tricks kind of video about some of the basic things and some advanced things that you can do to kind of ease your way in through the fortress. Now, number one, when you first get in your embark and you've launched into the fortress, the first thing you're going to want to do is click on any of these kind of basic tabs here. You want to go to labor and you want to go to kitchen and make sure that you disable plump helmet cooking, as if you do not disable this when you first grow your first batch of plump helmets, your dwarves will cook with them and you will not get seeds. You need to either brew the plump helmets or eat them raw in order to get seeds from them. So make sure that you actually tick this off and disable it until you have the ridiculous number of plump helmets and seeds that I have, in which case you'll be fine and dandy to once again start cooking with plump helmets, which I'll probably enable at this point anyway because, I'm kind of at that point. Next thing I'd say is, in this same tab under stone use, this will have all of the economic stones in the area, what they are, what they can be used for. So you can see right here, bituminous coal is used to make coke coal. Copper nuggets obviously are an ore of copper. Galena is an ore of silver, 50%, and well, it's an ore of lead with a 50% chance to also get silver, and so on and so forth. Likewise, you can see if they're magma safe or not. In other stone, you can see all the other stones that are magma safe that you can make use of, which is quite useful when wondering, wait, what is this? Let me go ahead and re-enable that. And of course you can enable whether certain stones here that can be used as, for example, a flux stone, will also be used to produce like blocks or other such things. Alright, another aspect is if you're having a lot of issues like I have been having with camels, agitated wildlife, one thing you can do, obviously, is build cage traps out in the wild just by building cages and then putting cage traps out using mechanisms and cages. However, just scattering them around randomly isn't necessarily the most effective thing, so one thing you can do is create trap walls or funnel walls. So just long sections of walls that lead into a little funnel with some traps on the edge and kind of down the center. This is a more effective way of really kind of gathering them in and kind of trapping any critters in the area that might be causing you problems, which you can then later on either butcher or tame and turn them into your own defensive force, kind of like what I have done with the evil camels that were once the bane of my existence. Another good aspect that you can do once the fortress starts getting as old as like this one is lag starts to become a problem, or refuse. Massive amounts of refuse start to become a problem, so at that point you're going to want to get rid of it. One of the easiest ways to do that is by making a atom smasher. So this is essentially a 4-tile bridge that is set to raise up, and it is also surrounded by a wall and a door with a garbage dump right underneath it. So as you dump, like say for example I don't want any of all these items right here. So I'll just tell them to dump all of these items. I'm tired of them. I don't want them in my stockpiles anymore. They will then dump the items into this one tile. You flick whichever switch is attached to that bridge, and then it will come down, crush it. And I would make sure the bridge is up, I will say. Make sure the bridge is up, because if you don't have the bridge up, it is no longer an atom smasher, it is instead a item catapult, and you will scatter your items all around the area, thus making an absolute mess, and I don't think you want to do that. But yes, once all the items are there, you want to forbid the zone, so lock it away so that your dwarves cannot access it, and thus get killed. And then flick the switch, which will trigger it, causing it to smash the items into non-existence, which will make it so that, it'll basically help to reduce some of your lag, is the hope and dream. The next thing, which is a bit more advanced, is training your military dwarves. So with military dwarves, you can kind of just set them to train and give them a armor stand or a weapon rack and tell them to train there, and they will do basically what mine are doing right now, which are training in this lovely room here. One very good thing to do, though, is to set them up to train in a staggered fashion, which I don't think I have scheduled here properly right now. I need to fix it, unfortunately. But staggered training is a very good thing to set up so that on their off days, what they can do is... excuse me, my brain is failing me for a hot second here. So you want to set them up to train 1 month, and then on the off month, they are set up to do one job and one job alone, which is, as I call it, pump it up. Which essentially is a pump operator job only, and the military dwarves are the only one to operate this. Essentially what you're doing is you're creating screw pumps. You're basically setting up a gym, essentially, for them to kind of work out at when they're not actively training their weapon skills. So what the screw pump does is when they're set up to only kind of do this job in the off season, if I click on them here specifically, you can see that this is the only job they are set to do. So when they are not actively training, they will come here and start pumping away at these screw pumps. They're not really pumping anything, they're only pumping air, but that greatly increases their strength and other capabilities. If I actively click on, let's say, Yogg's here, and go to his health and description, you can see that she is basically unbreakable, extremely agile, very strong, and slow to tire. So as they're pumping away at the screw pumps here, they will greatly raise these skills. Let's click on somebody who might not be, I know you're definitely up there as well. Yeah, unbreakable, extremely agile, very slow to tire, strong, and quick to heal. Who's new? You might be new. Let's take a look at you. You can see he's only very strong and is slow to tire, so he has not yet got the entire kind of aspect of that yet. Indefatigable, you've been training in that for quite a while. So as they're training in the off season with the screw pumps, they will greatly raise up that skill, getting them to the point of being just much more powerful dwarves and a bit more difficult to kill. The next thing I'll go to is mine defense. When you're digging into the mountain, eventually you're going to want to make sure that before you really start digging deep into where the cave layers are, that you're setting up some kind of like last-ditch defensive layer. So right here I have obviously a bridge hooked up to a couple of pillars, and then a bunch of fortifications dug into the surface here with the main kind of mine tunnel at the end. So this is so that if we breach into something not so friendly, we are able to quickly pull all of our dwarves back behind here using the burrow system and get our military set up here to deal with anything that might be rushing up here to invade our fortress. So it's a good idea to establish something like this to kind of secure your mines, per se, against any unfathomable horrors that you might unleash into your fortress. Although anything that might have building destroying will rip through this, so yeah, good luck with that. But for the most part, Forgotten Beasts usually don't have building destroying, as a simple bridge is enough to keep them out. The next aspect I will go into is something called ore dropping. So, oops, I went to the wrong layer there. So, in the upper areas of your fortress, you might end up encountering a whole bunch of different ore, whether it's tetrahedrite, copper, whatever the case might be. You're going to want to eventually get all of this ore all the way down to your magma furnaces, which I have set up here, in order to process them without having to waste all of the ridiculous amounts of fuel that one would have to make to kind of produce or kind of process all of that ore. So one thing you can obviously do is set up a long minecart system that goes all the way down to your furnace from wherever you're storing the ore. But the problem being you need to do a lot of calculations with track stops and stopping power, and it requires a lot of resources to really do that. And it's honestly a huge pain in the butt to set that up. Or you could go with a much, much simpler system, which I essentially call ore dropping. Now, you can set this up in a 2-tile or 3-tile design, whatever is your preference. Either way, it basically amounts to the same. So, essentially, you want to set up a track build a track stop on both tiles, or again, same thing on one end and the other end. It is then set up by, let me go ahead and just set it up again, per se, because I think this one got removed anyway. So we'll use that as an example. So we want to add a new route, add a track stop right here, add another track stop for here. Okay. We then want to tell it which items we want it to drop. In this case, we want it to drop stone, metal ores, all. So the only thing it is picking up is metal ores. It is picking them up from, and you can see right here, it'll either give to a stockpile, take from a stockpile, and we want to take from this stockpile. And also, when you are setting up, I should actually double check with that as well. When you are setting up your actual, there goes my brain for a hot second here. When you're setting up your actual track stop here, because I'm kind of, apologies, I'm getting ahead of myself. Under constructions and track stop, when you are setting this up, it will tell you in which direction it will auto dump. You want to make sure that the auto dump is set to dump in the direction of the hole when you are building the kind of central track stop per se. So make sure that when you're putting that in, that it is dumping that direction. For the rest, it can just be the X to basically say that this is just a stop. But yes, so the one next to the hole needs to be auto dumping in that direction. Anyway, going back to this here again. So next we link to the stockpile, which we did do, and then finally we go into the conditions. We can eliminate any of the additional conditions. This one is going down from the top, so when it is 100% full, which will be 5 ore, it will then be pushed down. You can also kick it, but honestly it's better to push it towards the next stop, which is right here, where it'll automatically dump it into the hole. Likewise, after that is done, we want this to then return, so this is going to be going back up when it is empty. So the moment that this is empty, it'll be pushed back to the starting line, where it will then begin to get filled again. And then, of course, finally we want to assign a minecart to this system, so they will now haul the minecart over to this track, start filling it up with ore, push it to the edge, which will then drop it all the way down the hole here towards your magma forge. Where if I look right here, you can see that this one tile is absolutely crammed with material. And then, of course, there's an actual, again, ore stockpile down here, set up to then take those ores. So that is the most efficient way of shuttling your ores all the way down to where your magma forge is located. If you have the option to just drop it straight down like that. Which would honestly be the best bet, because even if you were to get a minecart system like this one here that failed horribly going, it's just the efficiency doesn't even remotely come close. And the last thing that I will say, last tip that I'll give, is if you're having a lot of issues with moody dwarves in your fortress, one thing you can create is a mist or waterfall generator. Mist generators are built very similar to waterfall generators, in the sense that you need something generating power first. I do have a power plant down here, as you can see, although currently it is offline. I do need to kind of fix that, which I might do here quickly as well, just to kind of give you an idea of how that functions. So let me go ahead and trigger this here. I'll let them quickly go pull that so we can get this back up and running. So the way mine works is I have a bunch of floodgates kind of set, or floor grates, I should say, set up along a straight kind of column of stairs that go up into my fortress. And then I have a main chamber up here, which obviously is empty right now because my power plant shut down and is currently getting all muddy. And then I have a sub-chamber down below where all of the water falls into and collects, that then gets pumped back up to the main chamber. So as the water is kind of going through these floodgates and flooding into the fortress, which I should probably also close that as well, it will create a waterfall which gives them content feelings. And there's also the added benefit of, as they get washed by that waterfall, if they happen to run into it, they will also basically have a bath, which will greatly improve their mood. And that allows them to basically get a double whammy of just a bonus modifier to help kind of elevate their mood. Which is why I have so many dwarves in the fort that are very much so. The majority are basically happy, in part because of this system. Let me go ahead and let this run here for a hot second. And I'll go ahead and cancel my designations here for that. And they will go ahead and get that done. Hopefully, we'll see how that goes. Alright, they're getting that pulled. So and this is set up basically by channeling in a 3 and 1 position. Having this be a straight kind of just flat. Basically, let me go ahead and designate this off right here. So a basic power plant is essentially channel, channel, channel. Have this be flat with a screw pump in the middle, as you can kind of see, pumping from this tile here to this tile, which then, with the floodgates closed, will funnel off to either side of the water mill here, thus generating power constantly. Once this system immediately starts, everything kicks into gear, all the power gets funneled, and then it powers the whole system. We can see that as it floods in here. As the water kind of goes off to the side, everything starts churning. The water wheels are moving, the screw pumps are pumping, back up and rinse and repeating here. Let me go ahead and flick that switch again. Now everything is powered again. The screw pump stack that I have set up here is pumping the water up to the main chamber, which will then, of course, be released down into the main system, creating the waterfall effect. Obviously, though, even spray from like the ocean mist from being next to the ocean will have a very similar effect, but it's just a really nice way of giving your dwarves a good modifier of happiness. Another very important thing you can do, which I have not actually done in this fortress, is essentially making sure that the entrance to your fort, let's create what the hell, let's say channel here, for example. So we'll channel this whole thing here. So the example being that we have a ramp here on either side, walls on either side of that, and the center is filled with 3 deep water. Well, 2 to 3 deep water, basically. So if you make it so that your dwarves have to walk through 2 to 3 deep water to get into your fortress, that will train their swimming skill without endangering their lives. Which, if you've ever had, played with water in Dwarf Fortress, you will know that your dwarves will like to drown themselves, as I very unfortunately know from many kind of sections here, as several of my dwarves have unfortunately drowned. However, if you have all of your dwarves train their swimming skill by going through 2 to 3 deep water to get into your fortress, even like a small section of it, that will raise their swimming skill, but also give them a bath, which in turn will make them happy, as well as it's a good way to help wash off your dwarves, and prevent them from dragging any unfortunate spores or anything from Forgotten Beasts into your fortress. So it's a good idea to set up one of these even at your cave defense area right here as a way in and out of the mines. And you can actually have them just dump buckets into that as well to kind of get that going. But that's just a good thing to get set up in order to make sure that they are going to remain clean and also train their swimming skill to prevent them from potentially drowning at some point or another. So that should basically be all of the general tips and tricks that I have at the moment here. Excuse me, pardon me. Obviously, with the waterfall generator and the power plant, that is a lot more advanced to get set up. It takes a lot more materials with a lot of mechanisms and switches set up to different things. Obviously, then I'd have to get this closed off and reflood the chamber here in case I need to refill the power plant once again, which I eventually will have to do. And of course, you want to make sure that you do not get solid 7s in your power generator, because if you do, then the power generator will not run. Which is why I told them to then close these floodgates back off here again. Which they will hopefully be doing here shortly. There we go, they did. And now that that's shut off, I would then tell them to pull the lever that would initiate the reflooding of this, which will be done instantly. And then it's once more ready to go for the next round. There we go. So yeah, that's about all I got for some basic and some advanced tips and tricks to really get your fortress going initially, and to get some of your combat dwarves going later on, as well as increasing your happiness in general into the mid to late game. And of course, keeping any dust and or ichor, I should say, poisonous ichor from spreading around your fortress and making a lot of dwarves sick by creating little pools in your fort to prevent that from happening. For now, though, thank you very much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. If I can come up with any additional tips and tricks, I will 100% go ahead and do that. About the only other thing I can think of is, as is indicated by my farm plots here, poor soil. Building your farms in caverns is best, but honestly, as long as you eventually have enough trees to make potash, you can just fertilize them and you're fine. Or if you have a high enough skilled dwarf, you will also be fine with that. But regardless, thank you for watching. Have a great one, everybody, and I will see you all next time.